Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and what I want to talk about today is private prisons. Just because it's a conversation I've been having a lot on Facebook lately, because a lot of people ask, what's the deal with private prisons? Now, if you saw the video that I posted, I want to say a week ago, where I talked about private prisons, healthcare, and the effects of pricing, this is essentially the same argument I'm going to make today. Those who haven't seen it, well, now you'll get to see it. But the basic argument I'm making is this. And I'm going to make it in a little bit more nuanced way. So basically, when it comes to anything, you need to separate two things. The operation of it, meaning who runs it, and the funding of it. Where does the money come from? Okay, so something can be publicly funded, meaning the money comes from taxes, which are involuntarily collected, and something can be publicly operated, meaning operated by elected bureaucrats or people hired by elected bureaucrats that are paid for by your tax dollars. Things can be privately operated, meaning it's either a company or a charity, but the idea is that there's a group of people who aren't necessarily chosen through public elections, that are basically not a public entity running the entity. And then there's privately funded, meaning that if it's a charity, it solicits donations. If it's a company, it has a product that it sells and generates revenue. Okay, so there's funding and operation. Okay, so when we talk about private prisons, you have to realize there's two different things. How there's a private prison in today's context is maybe privately operated, but publicly funded, meaning it's tax dollars that are paying for a private company to run the prison. Okay, now that in itself doesn't set in stone what the incentives are. For any type of enterprise, and everything is an enterprise, every organization, every group, every charity is an enterprise, meaning it is a group of individuals organizing resources to meet some sort of end goal. Okay? So in that case, the incentives of any enterprise is based on how they generate revenue, not the fact that they generate revenue. Okay, so for example, if you're a charity, you're gonna do more of whatever results in you getting more donations. If you are a business, you're gonna do whatever results in you doing more sales. So if you're a private prison, if you're paid based on how many prisoners you receive, then you're going to push to get more prisoners, and you're going to try to spend less per prisoner. So the incentives are messed up because of the way you structure the payment. You create the incentives by how the revenue is generated. It doesn't have to be that way. So again, how a private operator operates, what their incentives are going to be based on the way their consumers pay them. And the same rule goes for government. Government workers, government contractors, all of them are incentivized by how they get paid and what influences whether they get paid or not. So politicians generally focus on whether they'll win the next election, because they'll keep their salary if they win the next election. So what they choose to do depends on what will result in them winning the election or getting the resources to win that election from donors. Okay? It's all about incentives. Okay? So in this case, a private operator, if you pay them in a different way, so a couple of ways I suggested is either paying them based on recidivism rates or payment on performance, which is something they're trying in healthcare, where they're saying, hey, okay, instead of paying doctors based on how many different treatments they give you, because that incentivizes the doctors just to give you more treatments whether you need them or not, but to pay them based on health. And there's been experiments in that, and saying, okay, well, basically you pay a doctor quarterly based on, or your insurance company will pay the doctor quarterly, and it will be based on your health results, not your health services. And people are trying to see how all that works, how accountable it is, how easy it is to track. There's, logistical issues. But you can theoretically apply the same logic to prisons. The other thing you can do, okay, is basically give prisoners more say in choice. Because another thing that sometimes influences practitioners is, again, it's not just about who pays, but also who gets to make the choice, who has agency. So right now, prisoners have no say in what prison they go to. So in that case, there's no reason to care about how comfortable they feel. There's no reason to care about at all how they're treated. And this is why you end up having these sort of inhumane outcomes. Because everything's optimized towards a politician who's trying to say, hey, look, we have a prison, we're saving money. Okay, and that's what they want to say because that's how they win an election. And private operators are like, hey, let's push for more crimes because more crimes means more criminals, which means more people in our jails. So you have this sort of weird set of incentives because you're paying per prisoner that creates an incentive for there to be more crime, meaning more things defined as crimes. Okay, and this is where you start having this criminalization creep in society. We're just naming everything a crime. And everybody, politicians win because they can say they're tough on crime. The more things they define as a crime, they say, hey, we're trying to protect you. And then when they lock up criminals, they say they're tough on crime, and then private prisons get paid more. So this is sort of really bad set of incentives created by that. Okay, if we did not look at jailing people as a good thing, as a hey, we put criminals off the street, instead really started thinking about, are we preventing crime instead of are we just being tough on it? That would change the incentives, but that's just you. But changing the incentives of voters, changing what voters want to hear is a much different proposition. But the other thing you could do is give prisoners a little bit of choice. Not saying, hey, every prisoner can just sit there and say, hey, I want to go to this prison, but maybe they can earn it. Okay, whether it be through work or through their behavior, through their reports, some sort of system for them to earn the ability to choose what prison they go to. Okay, so then what happens is that prisoners are going to want to choose the prisons that sort of are better. And that also creates an incentive for prisoners to also behave better. So you create a good virtuous cycle where prisoners are going to want to earn this right. And the fact they earn this right to choose can hurt the private prison as revenue, because if prisoners decide they want to go somewhere else, they get paid less, so they have an incentive to try to cater a little bit more to not completely abusing their prisoners, okay, and whatnot, okay? Now, again, people a lot of times just don't care about this issue because they're like, well, they just assume that every criminal behind bars is a horrible person. But again, when you start calling everything a crime, you end up just having a lot of normal people who just happen to be on the wrong side of a situation because, well, we called this minor thing a crime, or hey, we said this minor thing's an infraction, we're going to charge you a fine. Oh, you can't pay for it? Too bad, we're putting you in jail. Okay, when you start saying everything's an infraction, everything's a crime, everything requires a citation, you end up putting a lot of people in jail. So while really that's the problem that needs to be addressed, the over-criminalization, which means you need to change voter incentives and change a lot of the different incentives, we can at least also change the incentives within sort of the way we provide prisons and how prisons are paid for to create at least less inhumane conditions. And I think that's a better option than necessarily going, hey, let's just make all public prisons or all prisons publicly funded and publicly operated, because then what happens, you end up spending more, and it's probably not going to become all that more humane, because then you have the cost creep. So the cost goes up. Initially you may have some very positive changes. A lot of the programs that are good for reform, like education, might be put back in, but there's going to be very little accountability as far as the cost. So you're overpaying staff more so you're spending more on programs than are probably necessary to put that program in place, and then what happens, you're in the back where you started, and the pendulum swings the other way. So you can let the pendulum swing back and forth, or you can address the problem. So those are my reflections on that issue. My name's Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.